Hi, everyone. While everyone's still going in, I wanted to welcome you all and thank the speakers and especially you, the audience, for being able to participate here today. The conference couldn't be made without you and your support. Before I pass the virtual mic to our virtual speakers, I would like to get some housekeeping out of the way. Feel free to turn your camera on, but please keep your mic muted while the speakers are presenting. We've enabled closed captioning, as you can see from the slide. You can turn it on and off by clicking on the arrow next to the live transcription button at the bottom of the panel of your Zoom window and selecting Hide Subtitles. In the event of someone hacking into the Zoom session, we will deal with it by removing that person from the meeting. We'll also be recording and live streaming the sessions via YouTube. And this will be stopped during the Q&A in the last 10 minutes. You can see a notification through Zoom. You may enter questions in the chat box and I will read them to the speakers. Or you can send them directly to me if you wish to remain anonymous. We want to provide a trigger warning as sensitive subjects may be discussed. If any of the topics are triggering or upsetting to you, we encourage you to step away and come back when you're ready. And want you to know that this is a supportive environment. That said, we are not healthcare professionals. So if you want some more help, please go to our website, mindsinacademia.com/resources to refer for more information. Lastly, we want you to be respectful of others and will not support any inappropriate behavior or comments. And this may lead to exposure of the session. If you need help during the session, please contact IT or email us at mind.conference@gmail.com. Thank you, and I'm handing over to the wonderful speakers we have here today. Marta, Fiona, and Janice.
Jaishree.
Jaishree, almost.
That's okay.
All right. Do you see my slides? Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect. So yeah, everyone, a warm welcome from my side. My name is Marta. And I just finished my PhD in Berlin in the Max Obrück Center, and I'm at the moment collaborating with Dragonfly while I find my next job opportunity. Maybe I let Jaishree just say a few words. You're muted.
Classic Zoom problem. So hi everyone, I'm Jaishree. Thank you, Minds Conference, for giving me the chance to be a part of this panel. I also recently finished a PhD in plant ecological genomics, and I will be starting my first postdoc very soon in Aarhus University, Denmark, and extremely thankful to be here.
Thanks, Fiona.
Yeah, my name's Fiona, and I just wanted to thank everyone who's joined the session for what I think is a quite important and also probably difficult topic to discuss. And I did my PhD in Edinburgh, where I also did my undergraduate degree, and since then I've moved to Denmark, and I've been here for just over a year and a half now, working as a postdoc.
All right, so we will briefly start with the definitions of power abuse so that everyone is on the same page, and a bit of about prevalence and consequences, but then move towards our stories. How did we get in contact with this? And then move to questions and discussion with everyone. All right, so abuse of power is the misuse of a position of power by someone, usually supervisors, but can be also postdoc, to take advantage of a person in an inferior position for personal gain or to harm the said person. And this affects victims' self-confidence and self-esteem, and it has particular consequences on the mental health of the person because it really violates the dignity and self-worth of this person. And then, of course, it will impact work motivation and the ones in the team. So essentially, that would be the first thing. Then, of course, there's different types of this. This can be in a form of bullying, which could be defined as unwanted, offensive, and belittling conduct by an individual or actually a group. Usually, bullying is used also as a group, specifically for the group situation, violating the dignity of the person concerned. And also, it can be in a context of discriminatory behavior. So behavior that is conscious or unconscious, that treats individuals or groups unequally on basis of group-specific characteristics, such as from different minorities, it could be from the background or age or ability or disability status, rather. So why, yeah?
We don't see your slides changing. I don't know if you're going through them.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I am. Okay, you don't see my slides changing. Okay, shall I? Do you see them now?
Yeah.
Then maybe I just don't do it. Yeah, I will just leave it like this. Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so why does it happen specifically in academia? So there's quite an extensive amount of problems, let's put it, or contexts in academia that make power abuse or this kind of behaviors thrive. And it's quite a specific combination of settings. First of all, there's really strong hierarchies and dependencies. So for example, you probably all have felt how your PhD is like your baby, or your projects are really tied to our own identities in a way, and it is really tricky to let go of a project in the middle. So it's hard. You tolerate a lot of misbehaviors normally, or students usually do that, and this usually someone tolerates more the higher the dependencies are. So for example, if you also need your supervisors acceptance and being in good relationship with them for your visa, tolerate even more. So there's many different types of hierarchies. Also the part that we need supervisor acceptance, because typically there's temporary contracts. So that's another point of dependency. So you need to be in a good space with your supervisor at all points, which is abused normally, or not normally, but it can be abused by the supervisor. Then, of course, it's a very high competitive and performance-driven field. There's very few positions at the top, of very few professorship positions, and this makes it quite competitive. And also the stress is really high. And then also it's very individual based. So it's the teams rarely have the strength of the entire team. It's rather about specific individuals that make it, and the other ones, they don't make it, and that's also fine. So there's not really a big interest from institutes or supervisors to ensure the well-being of the entire team. Because that's just not how it's organized. How often does this different numbers from different reports? The most consistent number is 1 out of 5 has experienced discrimination and harassment during the PhD. So this is for PhD students specifically. There's, of course, a higher number of witnessed people that witnessed this. then there's particularly high numbers reported in for people of minorities, so mixed race researchers and LGBTQ, as well as female researchers have experienced quite high numbers of these behaviors. And the consequences. So there's not a lot of data, unfortunately, that shows a connection or what actually happens when someone is experiencing power abuse. But Cactus report does say that those who had experienced discrimination, harassment, or bullying were more likely to also indicate that they felt overwhelmed. But a report from Health Statistics shows a correlation of bullying regularity with anxiety scores and depression scores. Yeah, so this would be the data in academic environment for bullying and harassment. Yeah, so that was it from the introduction side, and now I would like to turn to Fiona, and then also for Jaishree and myself, and we'll just tell how we got involved with this topic. Fiona, you're muted.
Yeah, so I'll start by sharing some of my experiences, my unpleasant experiences throughout my time so far in academia. So as I said, I did my PhD in Scotland, and during this time I was spoken to in a way I really didn't like. So I had a senior colleague who would frequently make comments to me that were either upsetting or rude or unwanted. So he would say things like, "You have a small brain and you're not clever enough to talk to this person, so I'll do it for you. You're not very good at this," you know, general comments about my technical and personal abilities. And then he also said some very uncomfortable things like, "I followed your friend home in my car the other day to see which way she went." And then he would also do things like follow me everywhere, including to the bathroom. So it was just extremely uncomfortable, and he was always kind of around me and claiming seniority over me and kind of trying to dominate what I did, and it really affected my progress in my project. He really kind of stood in the way of my independence as well. So this was an experience during my PhD, and Marta, if you could go to the next slide, please. Also during this time, there was a very kind of public expose of the University of Edinburgh. So there was some accusations of harassment, especially at the senior level by the director of the institute. So many staff were feeling that they were a victim of bullying, threatening behavior. And it says here that dozens of staff described being bullying at the institute-wide level. So there was a whistleblowing event and exposure to the media. This was published in like lots of papers in the UK. And they got an external body in to investigate formally. So around this time, Corona happened, and I'm not sure how much this affected the investigation that went on, but the investigation concluded that there was no evidence of misconduct. So whether this is true or not, I have no idea, but it's just to show that things happen on institute-wide level for very senior people also, and it doesn't always lead to resolution, or there's an identification that actually a problem doesn't exist. And since then, I have moved on to doing my postdoc. And if you go to the next slide, I just wanted to highlight that the rates of depression and anxiety are much greater in graduate students than they are in the general public. And I certainly experienced this myself. So during my time in my academic career, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And as a result, I went on a mental health sick leave that was organized by my doctor. And I had some real problems in like applying this to my professional life. So I was in discussion with this with several people, and I have received some very unwanted comments. So I received comments saying things like, your mental health is your problem, and you will stand in your own way because of it. You're not motivated, so your project is not going to go anywhere, so your career is jeopardized. And also, I work with my husband, we work in the same group, and many conversations were happening not involving me, about me, with my husband. So employees were saying things like, to me, they would say, we can manage your problems, it's not fine, and we understand, and we'll be accommodating. And then behind my back with my husband, they were saying things like, we can't handle her emotions, and you need to come to us and tell me when she has a problem so we can manage her better. And then obviously there were further comments which I think are unacceptable. One of them particularly being that someone asked my husband whether the reason I was upset was because I had a miscarriage or something along these lines. And this is just a total violation of your rights and completely unacceptable. So as a result of this, I did like kind of raise the flag to say these behaviors are inappropriate. And I'm not really sure how much of a difference this has actually made to my experience. And in fact, it might have had some negative repercussions. So I have some suggested solutions, and we have a discussion of this coming later. So it's not that there's nothing to be done, and I have received some wonderful help. So we'll touch on this later. And with that, I pass on to the next experience. Jaishree, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. This is the Zoom fatigue talking here. Just, all right. Thank you so much, Fiona, for sharing that story. I could actually relate to quite a bit of it, and I'm so thankful to hear that you're actually moved on to better things. And I hope that you find what you, I mean, a sense of closure, because that's the hardest to achieve, right, in situations like this. I wanted to, I'm sorry, I wanted to share my story with all of you, a story of following my passion for understanding plant lives, which took me to actually 3 continents and made it possible for me to understand 3 very, very different cultures. As Marta actually explained in the beginning of this whole presentation, that being an international student is actually quite an exciting experience. But it comes with a lot of unique challenges, like, settling into a new culture, new curriculum, to a new way of life, essentially, on top of having to leave everything that you thought of as support structure behind you. My story is like similar to millions of immigrants who pack their bags in 46 kilos of baggage, and they travel to follow their dreams, leaving behind the loved ones and struggling between who we used to be versus who we want to become in a completely foreign environment. It can take a toll on you. In my case, I struggled to fit in quite a bit. I tried to build a support system, but research can be a pretty isolating experience. Struggles are considered a norm, and you're supposed to toughen up if you want to be a scientist. My research done on understanding plant lives had actually gotten me to a point where I was asking some pretty daring questions on altruistic behavior of plants. To top it all, I was actually in a place where I was the only foreign student in the team. The struggle was actually very real. Competitions between students for seeking the PI's validation was such a strong feeling that I experienced. And in hindsight, I can actually admit that I also indulged in some of it. Because, of course, I needed to succeed, because that's what I had to do to make it till this point. It took me 3 years of convincing to get my family to give me a chance to come abroad and study without being married, like most of other women in my place had. And I needed, like all immigrants, like I needed to keep landing the job to survive, to have no visa issues, or to have that financial burden that comes with being a foreign student. So toleration was something that I unconsciously accepted as norm, because talking about things would actually mean creating trouble, and that would hamper my chances of landing another job in academia. On one instance, one of the lab favorites actually photoshopped a picture of me to an older woman's body who was being kissed by a man, because it seemed funny for some reason. And this picture was sent out to my whole team and pasted outside my office. Now, you would think that I would complain about it right away to higher authorities and do something about it, right? But, when you reach a point where you don't respect yourself enough as an individual, and your entire self-worth lies in the hands of people you found awe-inspiring, the ones who were supposed to help you to propel into the next stage of your career, that's when you think that maybe you deserved what was happening to you, and that you deserve to feel horrible about yourself. I was in a very, very dark place in my life, and I did not have anybody to talk about it, because the walls of the canteen in our labs were supposed to be filled with scientific conversations and nothing else. Also, I was actually told to keep quiet or it would cost me everything that I'd worked for. I knew I needed to talk about it, and I tried to get appropriate help. A recent paper by Nature actually sought the fact that 1/3 of their respondents actually sought help for anxiety or depression, and these are all PhD students. It's actually quite alarming if you think about it, because not everybody even comes out and talks about mental health. So, it being in a foreign country where a lot of immigrants come and go, you would expect that there would be some sort of a mental health service available there. But the sad truth was that the only university counselor present in my university didn't even speak English. So, graduating in the middle of a pandemic, when it first created the havoc, I was preparing my manuscript and getting ready to graduate. I had multiple breakdowns till this point because of the continual harassment that was being hurled in my direction. It actually almost made me quit my PhD and do quite worse to myself, actually. But how could I go back home a failure? I needed that PhD, I needed that recommendation, so I tolerated. But it's not like people were not aware of what was happening to me. That's the scary part. Because for reasons not worth mentioning here, it was just considered a norm that I was supposed to remain invisible if I wanted to have that visa going and have a job. But the funny thing in all of this is that I didn't get either at the end of the day. I eventually found some help of my own, tried to build a support system, asking other people who had similar stories than me. They encouraged me to speak up, but things actually seemed to get worse after I spoke up. Power can be so consuming. A good publication, a grant sanctioned, high impact factors, H index, I index, it's all what keeps the thrill going on, right? Or so I was told to believe till that point. I was in the same vicious cycle. I felt like my love for science, of plants, of how good a scientist I am is all based on these metrics of external validation. It's because that became my entire identity. That's why they could do what they did to me, because I didn't respect myself enough to speak up. And after a point, I just felt that probably it was too late. But the biggest lesson that comes from my PhD is the fact that one thing we can learn from evolution of species is the ability to help each other and to be kind to each other. So I set out to talk to people to understand the underlying problems associated with why people feel that they can bully or harass someone. Started advocating for mental health, advocated and participated in policy making initiatives at both national and international levels. But most importantly, I tried to become an ally. So I founded a mental health support group for early career researchers 2 years ago. Some of the lessons that I learned from all of this is that as we know from the pandemic, and it has made it pretty evident that mental health of academics needs urgent attention. If we really want to support the current and future scientific leaders, this is the need of the hour. The second being the onus lies on all parties. From individuals to peers, PIs, institutions, policymakers, we all have to participate in ensuring that support is sought and provided. And as Marta again very nicely mentioned, that the problems, even though they seem widespread in academia, there is several evidence that shows that some portion of people may be disproportionately more vulnerable to mental health issues, and they may include international students, minorities of all kinds, women, etc. So equitable, timely, and adequate mental health support is a right that everybody has. And every individual is unique, right? And every story is important. I genuinely believe in the power of sharing stories, and all our stories are so powerful. They can actually really impact change. I don't think we say this enough, but all our experiences, everything that we've experienced is valid no matter what other people think about it. Our stories are our stories. Experiences are what build us and our lives. As for me, I think I found some direction and clarity of purpose to stay in academia and to actually help serve real change. And I'm actually very, very happy to see a lot of people here participating, like Minds Conference and organizations like Dragonfly Mental Health, for doing so much to bringing the knowledge on how to support academics to institutions. Thank you.
I'm pretty speechless. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I'm really inspired. Wow, yeah. I want to take a minute. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, sharing my experience. So actually, it's my experience in academia was a bit of a different road here, because I well, I did suffer myself with anxiety, and it was through the roof during my PhD. But during that time, I actually, when I was in my third year low, really things were not going well in my project, and I actually found activism as like a way of changing, and extremely good for me. So this was my channel, and it was super important. But actually what brought me to power abuse was not to this topic was not my own experience, but rather one of my friends from graduate school. So yeah, I actually have the consent to tell the story about her, and also to capitalize on it, really, because this is what we did. So my friend, Jane, it's not a real name, but Jane, she started a PhD with me, and then in the beginning we were friends, but then we sort of grew apart, or we didn't really talk so much for about 2 years. And during this time, what I came to understand later, she had been sexually harassed by the postdoc that she was working with for that amount of time. And of course, starting with some very, some comments that in the beginning she was just like, okay, probably that's just weird. He's just weird. That's fine. Like little comments on her appearance or the way she was, pipetting, which for her felt uncomfortable, but she didn't know what to do really. In the institute, we were not told how to act in this circumstance and when the sexual harassment starts. So the environment also wasn't there. There wasn't a conversation. And then with time went by, she heard increasingly alarming comments such as, her high heel sounds distract him, and that she deserved, sometimes when her experiment went badly, that she deserved, I don't know, like there was some gestures like this, right, actually. So really completely out and inappropriate. And it's culminated in an unwanted touch that she, at that point, really was able to put it in the box of, this is inappropriate, I have to do something about it. At that point, of course, she was isolated. She didn't feel like any of us, she didn't reach out to any of us. And the institute, she didn't know what to do. So she took a sick leave, but before that, she tried to talk to their supervisor. And what happened from here is actually even a more twisted part of the story, because she received no support whatsoever, but also was told to tolerate it, and because this is what's happening, and this is completely part of it, and also his career would be ruined if she would do something, the classic, which then drove this person to further humiliate, in meetings, and I cut resources from her project. And she, at that point, was really depressed and didn't know what to do, and took sick leave. And after 2 months of sick leave, she returned with a lawyer and looked for us, for friends. And at that point, again, I was really in my own world with my own problems, but this brought me completely out of my own problems, because it was just unacceptable, and it could have happened to any one of us. This was just an environment that wasn't supportive enough. So at that point, we managed to have a group of people, of employees, that wanted change, and we wanted the directors to do something about it. And we were really angry at that point. I remember we wrote a very angry email, which, to our surprise, was answered really quickly with a meeting date 2 days later. So we prepared extremely well for that meeting and managed to convince them, also by reading testimonies of several other people that were suffering also from power abuse, and convince them that this was a systematic issue. It was not just this one case, but we wanted a reform. And they, at that point, also because there was a lawyer involved, I'm pretty sure they just didn't have a choice. So yeah, I want to just finish by saying that from that point on, we were invited to create a task force and really transform the whole institute. So this was more than a year project, which turned out to be more passionate, more my drive than my own project. And that's also why I'm right now actively working on this field and consulting and giving talks, because I just learned so much, also with consultants, mentors, professors of the fields that we could ask for, so experts that we could ask, and they became my mentors also. So it was really a fantastic experience in this way. And we did, for example, we made therapy for free available for the entire campus, and as well as compulsory leadership trainings, which we can debate whether it works or not. But yeah, we made that, and also reorganized the entire reporting because it just wasn't working. People that receive the first responders don't know what to do in those circumstances. So that is a huge problem. Yeah, so this is something that we did. Yeah, beyond other things, and I'm happy to brainstorm about it in the discussion. So thank you for listening. Yeah, I think that's actually, I will stop my sharing here because we can discuss directly with each other. And I want to also say that we will not be recording, or we continue recording, but we won't share this part anywhere. At least this was what we agreed so far, at least later. I wonder if someone has any question regarding our experiences, or also about bullying and harassment.
That was incredibly inspiring from all the speakers. I think I can relate to a lot of the situations she went through as an international student and as someone who studied in the UK. So why don't we start off with, I think Marta started off really well with what can be a solution. Any other one want to give in a word on how can we solve?
Sure.
How can we make? Yeah.
Well, for me, when I was going through these pretty difficult experiences, the number one help for me was a colleague who saw that I was having a hard time. And this would not work for everyone because not everyone wants to be approached, but she did actually directly approach me and said, I can see that you're not okay. Do you want to have a conversation? And from this point on, she's been my real confidant and has helped me with so many of my struggles. And anytime I have a problem, I can go to her to discuss, whether it's personal or professional or a combination of both. So finding this person that you can really trust, who works sort of in a related area to you, but is not directly hierarchical to you, has been a massive help and something that I could suggest for other people to try and look into if it's a possible route for them. And then, of course, she put me in touch with the facilities available at the university. So from there, I managed to go to some counselling that was offered through the university, which was extremely helpful. So this is also a very viable route for people if you want to avoid discussing with the person directly involved in your case.
So, what about you, Jaishree?
Yes, you got it right this time. Yeah, I think I completely agree with Fiona on the fact that sometimes people who may not completely be in the same situation, but are, say, in the same hierarchical structure as you are, can become very, very powerful allies to you. And having that sort of a peer support can, I mean, sometimes just saying it out loud can help you realize what's happening to you. Sometimes you may just feel that a lot of things that are happening to you are a combination of your circumstances and how things are supposed to be, which is not something that you're supposed to come. You're going to come to the realization that this is what's happening is wrong only when somebody else says that to you. And I think for something like that to happen, you need to have that kind of trust built with that other person. Although it is claimed on more occasions that the relationship with your PIs or your mentors is supposed to be the kind where you should be able to approach them if you are having certain difficulties, with this, not just with respect to your project, but all the things that help you to do your project. But more often than not, students are not, I think, comfortable enough to share. Some students might be, but I know quite a bit of them are not. So having that kind of a peer support group can be extremely useful.
Yeah, I think you actually nailed it, all three. I mean, just being able to being an activist and say, hey, this is not okay. But I agree with Fiona, who said that an outside person can bring an outside perspective to the problem.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I want to also point out that being a bystander could, or like an active bystander, so actually being that person that goes to the victim, so witnesses the victim or the situation, and then actually going there afterwards could be, you know, even if it's possibly dangerous for the witness, like just rather wait a little bit, but then, you know, address this and ask, like, this act of kindness is so important because it validates the experience of the victim, which typically, you know, it's very easy that you're in this mode of it's my fault, or I did something to deserve it. Like, that's actually very common for the victim. And when someone else comes and says, you know, I saw that, I'm so sorry, are you okay? And, you know, maybe that's all that's all you can offer also. And that tiny part is extremely important. So just actually informing people about this, I find super relevant. So thanks, Fiona, for bringing that up.
I think another thing that was very helpful in kind of the terms of allies, I had a friend who was also, you know, I trusted her, I told her my experience, and she could also see the experience firsthand. She also went and spoke to the occupational health board about what was going on. So this was an indirect way to bring attention to my experience and others in the group as well. This was quite useful too.
Yeah.
Okay. So here we are just going to stop the live recording so people can start the Q&A and feel safe to ask any questions you want.
Yeah,
Yeah, so perhaps just a few words about if you're experiencing bullying and harassment. I think we talked about this, you know, trust your instincts. So if it feels bad, it needs to be addressed. It's not something that will stop, most likely. Yeah, so let's, you know, take care of yourself, and if you can, ask for help, and especially from therapists, and document everything. If there's emails, save them, and write also how it made you feel. Actually, this is also quite powerful for the person that can read it, and then eventually report. But there's a specific way of reporting that you can do safely. You know, just, you know, this will take time, and you will have to retell disturbing stories. So I wouldn't do it if you're not in a more stable place. And this also requires confidentiality, empathy, and action from this person. So I would only report if you know that these people are competent and will take your case properly, which is rare, to be quite frank. But yeah, in case, I definitely think this is important, and get support. And actually might be really important for one to heal, and helps prevent the harasser from, you know, harassing more students. But yeah, you are the priority, not, you know, others at that point. So take care of yourself first. Yeah, and here I think we talked about a few of these points that you can create a bit of an institutional change, and if not you, just if you have no energy, rather use your story to motivate other people like me that, for example, energy to actually push for something if change is not being made. So yeah, make sure the directors know your interests. So get united, get into, organized and be elected, this kind of things as student body, for example. Then talk about these topics also in your surroundings. If you can, if you're in a safe position that these topics feel possible, but actually a lot of people feel like this wouldn't be welcome, but then when someone starts, it's usually, everyone feels like this should be addressed, or a lot of people feel like this should be addressed. So I really invite you to learn which structures are in place. Is there therapy? Once you arrive to an institute, before you need any help, this is when you actually should, or when we can learn about, the structures in place before you need them. Maybe nothing really happens, but I feel that this is important just to know. Also tells a lot about the institutes, if if they have any support structures. And then if your organization has a code of conduct, or maybe they don't, but rather try to push for one. This is super important. It tells the values of the institute. And I feel this is also important for the culture change later on. And yeah, leadership training for PIs, for example, I also referred. And also in your group, educating yourself and taking care of yourself and others, being in these kind of discussions, but also if you can, in a situation that you feel safe, set expectations and boundaries with your supervisor. This is, of course, not if you're being harassed. This could be maybe not safe in that situation, but rather, if you can, definitely take control of your PhD and be an active bystander. So check in with the victim, as we also referred. So yeah, that's it from my side. Yeah, I hope, yeah, okay, so just 1 minute. Yeah, so I hope this was I'm looking forward to continue this discussion in more places like this, more safe places like this. I don't know if maybe the others want to say some words.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining in and for organizing the session. And it's very good and powerful to have these conversations.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I'm just going to say some few words to conclude the blocking reminds. I don't know if you can unshare.
Ah, yes, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say a few words to conclude this block, saying that this concludes the conference, and we wanted to thank so much for this thoughtful discussion today over a variety of topics in the academic mental health setting. Thank you, Dragonfly Mental Health, for hosting this workshop that kicks off this section and supporting this conference altogether. Thank you to the attendees who made it and participated. We hope that you learned something new from the session and from each other, so that you can support your future colleagues and future workplaces. The session today has been recorded partially, except for the part in the Q&A section. Feel free to check out our website for the recording of other sessions, where you can find mental health resources from around the world. And finally, we ask you that you provide some feedback in the short survey that we posted in the chat box. So yeah, it's been awesome. Very thoughtful discussion. I think you just made some really good points.